Welcome. My name is Benebo. The development of a farm company essentially entails the continual transapplication of the farming for food subsistence farming process by simply scaling up the processes of the bench scale farming model. Going forward, however, for lucidity, there needs to be made this distinction in referencing between the current as used terms of commercial farm and industrial farm. For the purpose of the discussion here, the terms will be commercial farm company and industrial farm company. Although there is a certain correspondence between the terms as used, the characteristic meaning are different. For instance, while an industrial farm company produces just one farm produce, like the current term industrial farms, the former is wholly sustainable in essence of operations. Therefore, the industrial farm company is devoid of all the environmental offensive characteristics. The growing or developing of a farm company in general, in effect, creates a thrust that entails replication of progressively larger designs and implementation of the mechanisms on which the subsistence farming processes were developed, such that these mechanisms on a commercial scale reflect and exhibit the functions and features of the subsistence farm, or align and are well embedded into existing commercial scale farms, effectively transforming the existing farms into farm companies. One of the foremost steps of transapplication is the reproducibility of the processes and possibly the development of the first-tier fully functional farm process company operating pilot production plant, sort of the equivalent of a chemical process company operating a pilot production plant, and could be deemed farming process company. So, two challenges face the commercial farm operator farmer. First, implement a small-scale, albeit subsistence class, bench-scale farming model for developing the farming process on which the existing farm would be transformed into a farm company. Second, implement a farm, though larger than the bench-scale farming model, yet relatively much smaller farm than a commercial-scale farm, to be operated as a pilot production farm for use in transitioning from the subsistence farming process into the fully fledged commercial production farm. This second-tier farm is, of course, clearly large enough to yield farm produce. Obviously, this farm has the role of being a component of the infrastructure, but also allows the performance of the initial scoping product for target margin. The relationship for this thrust is so that each commercial scale farm, which farms a different set of produce, gets to adapt and develop the foundational farming process with specificity to the produce of choice of farming. Yet, be it noted that this needs to have construct farming specific process is not based on the usual belief of certain soils being better suited for specific crops, but rather on the farming skill set and the preference of a farmer for the target crop. Because, after all, the usual belief of suitability of a soil for a crop is made non-operational with the use of biofertilizers, which is a kind of leveler of the playing field, because all soils have the same characteristics with the use of biofertilizer. So any crop can be grown anywhere. Of course, the larger portion of the land mass or farm should still be farmed with best effort. After all, taxes still have to be paid and insurance have to be paid, as are other expenses. The primary goal for this sector is to ensure survival and maintenance of ownership during the transition period to a farm company. In essence, then, this episode entitled Building Farm Company from Bench Scale Farming Model prefers the procedure for scaling up the farming for food subsistence farming processes in evolutionary build-up of a commercial production farm, or the evolutionary transforming of an existing commercial scale farm into the production component of a farm company. Prefers the operational infrastructure deemed to characterize a farm company. Prefers the scoping of the prospective farm produce aimed at yielding a target margin. The driver rationale guiding the building of a farm company based on bench scale farming model has the object of evolving a structured development of farm companies that operate, manage commercial production farms that are not only efficient as comparably with any currently operating industrial farm, but also absolutely pervasively sustainable. Moreover, these farm companies will also operate with near self-sufficiency. So, given an approximate length and width dimensions of the farm, irrespective of being whether virgin land or existing farm, the farmer portions off along the length dimension a mass of 20 feet by 10 feet, with the 10 feet cutting into the width dimension of the farm and the 20 feet along the length dimension. Admittedly, this portion of land is larger than the 9 feet by 7 feet of the subsistence farm, but then this land is explicitly for developing the bench scale farming model. An end space of 5 feet by 10 feet would be set aside to hold the water tank, energy processes, and biofertilizer processes. The land is then developed as per episode 2 into a farming land. All the tasks of episode 3 through episode 10 are then implemented. As with the subsistence farming process, the first consideration is the delivery of water to the model farm. That is because the electric power generation requires water and the biofertilizer processes require water. However, agreed, the water delivery system in turn needs power. Yet, starting off with the delivery of the water is tenable because in the absence of electric energy, mechanical energy can always be used to start off the delivery of water, as was demonstrated with siphonic methods in episode 3, entitled Provisioning Farm Source Water. Because there are more biotic ways to start off with here, the electric power process should be the fully developed technology as per the episode 25 through 28. The operations should then be fully automated with a bang-bang controller concept based on the use of PLC programming. Similarly, the biofertilizer process plant will also be the fully developed version as per episode 29. The operation should then be fully automated, again with a sort of bang-bang controller concept based on the use of PLC programming. The choice crops of the farmer are then farmed on the land following the usual approach of planting season of the farmer, except for adhering to the root functionality domain construct and the deployment of light dispersers network. Some crops are also not permitted to bear fruits, as those are used for seed production or seeds production for the next season. After the planting of the crops, when the operations of the farm goes into a state of routine, during that interlude or hiatus, the daily activities start being recorded and continually get organized into a flow diagram. The flow diagrams or flow chart are continually adjusted and modified to capture the daily and weekly routines and any changes thereof. However, the routines should be sooner broken out into farming and planting related routines and accounting and expenses related routines. The flowcharts or diagrams are drawn for each group of the routines, but also drawn as an integrated flowchart. The routines are then reviewed daily for changes and the flowcharts adjusted accordingly. Especially the farming and planting, otherwise production-related routines, are reviewed daily for updates and the routines sketched into processes as the start of the process development. After some stability shows through in these routines of the daily changes, then the routine should be finally built into a process and the process implemented with an evolving automation controller system. The control system's initial implementation starts off with the use of bare bones of PLC programmable system for standard measures. Next should be the harvest anticipation and hence the preparation of the harvest Gantt chart. The procedure and rationale for the preparation of the harvest Gantt chart remains the same as with the subsistence farm harvesting planning as discussed in episode 30. Care must be taken to separate the core harvesting entailing removal from the farm and post-processing harvesting dealing with curing and other assortments of actions. Ultimately, at the end of the planting season, the harvest Gantt chart is followed in performing the harvest. The end of the first year or season of bench scale model farming should launch, in essence, the farm company, as there will have been put in place an administration group, a production group, and a seed supply group. At the end of the first year or season of the bench scale model farming, the costs are also compiled and the revenue also calculated or estimated and distributed over the farm produce item. These items are made to correlate with the number of root functionality domains. The vertical axis of the break-even graph is the revenue, as always, but the horizontal axis is the root functionality domains marked off in integer units, with the maximum of the set being the number that can be expressed on the farm. So then these numbers are then reconstructed to give a sense of the break-even point for the larger interim farm. In this calculation, the landmass is fixed, therefore the production capacity is fixed because the number of root functionality domains is fixed as well. Hence, the revenue change variations then must fall on the scoping of the products for farming operations. Variation analysis therefore focuses on the crop's content or scope for each of the calculations for the target market margins. Invariably and ultimately, a scope of farming crops is determined. The analysis must explicitly remove the cost of seed because the seeds that were got from the plants during the model farming did not need to be included in the cost. The pilot production farm landmass is next decided. The allocation should be at least 4 times the bench scale model. The section of the main farm at which the allocation is made is immaterial, except that for cost efficiency, the allocation is contiguous to the 5 feet by 10 feet portion of the land where the process technologies, biofertilizer, electric power, are deployed. The reason is so that the adaptation of these technologies to service the pilot production plant appears integrated with the pilot production farm. The set of crops determined to be profitable are then used once again to determine the break-even point of the pilot production farm. Of course, this will determine a different set of production volumes of the farm produce, but it will establish the viability of the pilot production farm. The pilot production farm is the test bed of when the efficiencies and conditions of profitability are created and established. Notably, though, this time around, the biofertilizer process plant already exists, the electric power plant already exists, and the water delivery system also already exists. So the focus is not on these mission critical but extraneous support. The focus is on the operations and repeat of the activities of the bench scale farming, but under circumstances that prevent making mistakes that were made previously. So again, the land mass is developed into the sustainability production farm as in episode 2, and then guided by the results of the break-even analysis and the number of root functionality domain as evaluated, and the corresponding number of ridges is determined, and accordingly the ridges for the plant are constructed, but this time with an inter-ridge spacing of 3 feet. The factor of inter-ridge spacing ultimately determines the size of the pilot product farm. The light dispersers deployments are then designed in correspondence with the ridges and the ridges orientation in the farm, as was the case in previous episode of the subsistence farming, and then networked again with the light dispersers for maximal irradiation of the sunlight on the plants. Of course, the sunlight harness photo guide may now be increased to ensure that the endemic insolation of sunlight is the same as in the farm. The choice crops of the farmer are then again farmed on the land following the usual crop of planting season of the farmer. However, at this time, only the break-even select crops seeds are planted in the root functionality domains already pre-implemented, and the ridge-specific light dispersers lights turned on. Again, right after the planting process and the interlude or hyalude starts, the focus shifts to the processes. Yet again, the production processes are reviewed yet again daily, but this time for mechanization. So then, of course, where appropriate, toys are repurposed into model designs of the automation controller devices, and by model design is meant toy trucks and airplanes such as purchased from toy stores may be repurposed and configured to perform the production routines at the set times. A significant advancement in this effort, if in fact implemented, would be the pair model designs that travels the length of the ridges and creates the root functionality domains. One model design digs out the domain space and the other fills it with the biofertilizers. Ultimately, after the end of the season of operating the pilot production farm, the productivity performance is contrasted with the break-even analysis data and is reviewed once again for forensic analysis of variances subsequently used for update adjustments. The updated break-even analysis system is then used subsequently yet again, but this time for the actual large commercial scale farm, the would-be production of the operational farm company. Augmentation to the biofertilizer process, electric power generation plant, and water delivery system in accommodation of the expanded needs of the pilot production farm relative to the bench scale model are adopted as guides to making adjustments to the process technologies in readiness for servicing the large-scale farm. All devices and vehicular machines are purchased and fully repurposed into mechanized machines based on the toy model designs to service the specific production operations need of the farm. Finally, the farm company is given a name. Patents on the mechanization designs are filed where necessary and if desired, and an improvised office space built out of containers are deployed for the offices to house the administration, production, and marketing and sales department, and the seeds management group that supplies seeds to the production department. And at this time, a farm company has obtained. The conclusion that will be drawn here is that there exists a path by which a land mass could be adopted as fixed production capacity farm space, and that can be developed into a farm company that exists within the spectrum spanning farming from subsistence through to industrial farming, not industrial farms. Effectively, the commercial production farm of a farm company is characterized as having certain properties, including sustainability, virtual self-sufficiency in embodiment of supply chains of seeds, biofertilizers, power and water, and is fully automated as necessary. And most significantly, implements tropism restrictions that minimizes plant interaction diseases. The farm company, like every other corporation, also has many departments as is necessary to carry out its mission, but has at a minimum 3 departments: administration, production, and marketing and sales, process and techniques division, and test bed division. The test bed division being the first bench scale model farm, and the process and techniques division being the pilot production farm. And it is a wrap. And on that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to this observation about efforts aimed at alleviating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dweller farms and emergent country small farm farmers. You are truly appreciated, and if you would like to get privileged viewer, reader information, access podcasts of specialized content, or access even vertically integrated concepts such as the farm company just discussed, then I implore you to join my support club and enjoy that privilege status. Moreover, while still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel, as you'll be informed of the publication of every new episode as soon as it is released. Thank you. Bye. Till next episode.